The night sky burned with red fire as the transport ship cut through the atmosphere. Inside, rows of alien cadets sat in silence. Some had claws that tapped on metal seats. Others had glowing eyes that never blinked. Their bodies were strong, their weapons sharp. Each cadet carried the pride of their homeworld. This was no ordinary test. It was the Deadly Forest exam. The Deadly Forest was feared across the galaxy. Every year it swallowed brave cadets and spat out broken souls. The rule was simple: survive for 7 hours. That was all. 7 hours inside the forest and you passed, but most failed long before that time. The transport shook as the pilot's voice echoed, "Cadets, prepare. Landing in Zone 13. The cadets looked at each other. Some smiled with sharp teeth. Others raised their weapons with confidence. They were ready. At least that's what they thought. At the far end of the row sat one figure who looked ordinary. No glowing skin, no armored body, no sharp claws. He was just a human boy, smaller than most. His uniform was loose, his hands empty. The alien sneered. "A human? In this exam?" One reptilian cadet hissed. "He will last 10 minutes, another said, laughing. "Not even 10, a third added. The human stayed quiet. He did not argue. His eyes only stared at the dark window, where the outline of the forest below spread like a black ocean. The ship landed with a heavy thud. The doors opened. A foul wind rushed inside, carrying the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. Strange cries echoed in the distance, cries that no one could name. "Begin," the instructor's voice commanded. The cadets jumped down. The ground was soft, covered in thick moss that swallowed footsteps. The trees were massive, their trunks wide as towers, their branches twisted like claws. Strange lights flickered deep inside, as if the forest itself was watching. The reptilian cadet roared, slamming his blade into the ground. "Let the hunt begin," he shouted. The stronger cadets scattered, eager to prove themselves. Some flew above the trees with wings. Others used their senses to track hidden prey. Sparks of energy lit the forest as the first powers were unleashed. But the forest was not silent. The forest answered. A low growl rumbled from somewhere deep. The ground trembled. Insects with glowing shells swarmed through the air. Shadows moved between the trees, too fast for the eye to follow. The forest had awakened, and it did not welcome guests. One alien cadet struck at the swarm with fire, laughing. The next second, the swarm turned on him. His fire sputtered as hundreds of wings cut through his armor. His scream lasted only a breath. Silence followed. The other cadets froze. Their confidence cracked. The human did not move. He looked at the trees, then at the moss, then at the sky above. His mind was not on fighting. His mind was on surviving. He whispered to himself, 7 hours. I only need 7 hours. The other cadets began shouting, forming groups ready to fight. They argued about who should lead, who should scout, who should guard. Their voices rose. The human turned away from them. Noise was dangerous here. He stepped lightly, almost careful not to disturb the ground. His eyes scanned for branches, thick vines, anything useful. A sudden roar shook the forest. One of the strongest cadets, a giant armored beast, charged at something hidden. Trees cracked as his massive body slammed forward, but then came a louder crack. His scream ended with a crash as his huge body was dragged into darkness. The forest grew silent again. Silent, but watching. Fear spread among the cadets. They looked at each other. Their glowing eyes no longer showed pride. For the first time, doubt entered their hearts. But still, they ignored the human. To them, he was weak, unimportant, already dead. The human found a large tree and placed his hand against its rough bark. It was strong. Its branches stretched wide. It was high above the ground, high enough to be safe. He looked up into the dark canopy. He saw shapes moving far below, not above. A thought came to him: the ground is death. The trees are life. He took a deep breath and began climbing. Behind him, more screams echoed. The exam had only just begun, but the forest had already taken its first victims. The human climbed higher, each branch carrying him further from the danger below. He did not have claws or wings. He did not have glowing powers. But he had patience. He had a plan. At the top, he sat on a thick branch, breathing hard. He looked down at the chaos. The cadets fighting shadows they could not see. Monsters circling, glowing lights moving in the dark. For a moment he closed his eyes and listened. The wind whistled. The forest whispered. 7 hours, he said again. I can survive 7 hours. and somewhere deep inside the forest something growled in answer. The exam had begun. The deadly forest was hungry. The deadly forest had no mercy. The moment the exam began, it showed its true face. Screams had already echoed through the thick trees, and silence had swallowed them just as quickly. The cadets, once proud and fearless, now stood in groups with uneasy eyes. Their alien pride was cracking like thin glass. The forest was alive, and it wanted them broken. One cadet, a tall insectoid warrior with razor arms, clicked his mandibles nervously. "This place is cursed," he whispered, though his voice carried in the still air. Another cadet, covered in glowing armor, raised his spear. "We are warriors of the galaxy. We do not fear shadows." His voice was loud, too loud. The sound bounced from tree to tree as if announcing his presence to everything lurking in the dark. The human, still sitting high in his chosen tree, listened. His eyes scanned the forest floor. The cadets were strong, yes, but they made mistakes. They shouted, argued, and stomped through the moss. They showed the forest where they were. He whispered softly to himself, "Noise calls death." Below, the reptilian cadet slammed his tail. "We hunt together. Nothing can stop us." He looked around, expecting cheers. But no one cheered. Fear was already spreading through them like poison in blood. A sudden rustle came from the left. Everyone froze. Weapons raised, eyes glowing, claws ready. The sound grew louder, branches breaking, heavy steps breathing. Something big was moving through the shadows. Then it appeared, a beast stepped into view. It was taller than the trees themselves, its body covered in scales that shimmered like metal. 6 glowing eyes blinked one after another. Its jaws dripped black liquid that hissed when it touched the ground. The cadets panicked. "Attack!" shouted the reptilian cadet. He charged forward, swinging his blade. Others followed, powers flashing, fire, lightning, acid, claws. The forest lit up like a battlefield, but the beast did not fall. It did not even flinch. With one swipe of its massive claw, 3 cadets flew into the darkness. Their screams cut short. A burst of acid spit burned through another. The smell of scorched flesh filled the air. The human watched from above. His heart pounded, but his body stayed still. He studied the monster carefully. It attacked the loudest first. It crushed the brightest lights. The ones who shouted, the ones who flashed power. Those were the first to die. The tree branch beneath him shook as smaller creatures scuttled below, hunting in the shadows. He pressed himself against the trunk and closed his eyes, slowing his breath. Silence was his shield. On the ground, panic spread. The cadets scattered in every direction. Some dropped their weapons. Some tripped on roots. Others clawed at each other just to escape. Their proud voices had turned to cries of fear. "Help me," one shouted before vanishing under black vines. "Stay together," another screamed, but no one listened. The forest was tearing them apart without mercy. And then came a terrible sound, a low, deep laugh. It was not human. It was not alien. It was the forest itself. The trees groaned, the branches creaked, the ground shifted. The cadets froze, terrified. One brave cadet raised his staff, glowing blue. "We can still—" The ground opened beneath him. Roots wrapped around his legs, dragging him down into the soil. His voice choked, then silence followed again. The human opened his eyes. He had seen enough. Power, speed, strength. It was all useless here. The forest punished pride. It punished movement. It punished sound. He looked up through the canopy. Only darkness above. He looked down. Chaos below. Then he looked at the branches around him. Thick, strong, wide enough to hold him. Build high, stay quiet, he thought. That's the way. While the others fought and screamed, the human began gathering vines and small branches. He worked slowly, carefully, tying knots, weaving supports. His hands moved with calm purpose. The forest roared again, shaking leaves free, making birds with sharp beaks scatter into the night. But he did not stop. His small shelter was taking shape, branch by branch. Meanwhile, the cadets' numbers fell. Of the 20 who entered, already half were gone. The survivors stumbled back together, wounded and trembling. Their weapons cracked, their powers drained. They looked nothing like the proud warriors who had stepped off the ship. The reptilian cadet, covered in cuts, hissed in rage. "We are the strongest. We cannot fall here." His voice shook, not from anger, but fear. The insectoid cadet pointed at the human above. "Look at him. He hides like a coward in a tree. Is this survival? But even as he spoke, another shadow darted from the bushes. Claws reached out and dragged him into the darkness. His voice cut off mid-sentence. The human did not answer. He only tied another vine tighter. The reptilian glared up, snarling, but then the forest growled again. He turned and froze. Behind him, more glowing eyes had appeared. Not one, not two, dozens. The night was still young. The forest was only beginning. The human sat quietly in his half-built shelter. He did not smile. He did not relax. But he whispered once more, almost like a prayer. 7 hours. That's all I need. Below, fear ruled the cadets. Above, patience guarded the human, and the forest watched them all. The deadly forest was no ordinary place. Every shadow carried teeth, every whisper carried danger. The cadets had entered with pride, but now their numbers were falling fast. Some had been swallowed by roots, others dragged into darkness by unseen claws. Fear spread like smoke through their ranks, and yet, high in the branches, the human was calm. He sat on a thick bough, watching with careful eyes. Where others swung blades and unleashed powers, he worked with silence. His hands tied knots. His arms pulled vines tight. He shaped the forest itself into something new. The alien cadets below noticed. "What is he doing?" hissed the reptilian survivor. His scales cracked from battle. "He hides," spat another with a wounded arm. "Humans are weak. They always hide." But their words trembled. They were bleeding, limping, exhausted. The human, however, was building. One branch became a beam. Vines became ropes. Leaves became cover. Piece by piece, a simple shelter grew among the trees. It was no palace, no fortress, but it was clever. It was quiet. The cadets laughed at first, their voices bitter. Does he think monsters fear wood? Will a treehouse stop the forest? But even as they mocked, the forest answered. From the darkness, a creature leapt, thin and long, with too many arms. It dropped on one cadet, dragging him screaming into the shadows. The others turned in panic, slashing wildly at the air. Their weapons struck only emptiness. The human did not move. He pressed his body low, hidden by leaves. The monster did not climb. It hunted noise, and the human gave it none. Slowly, the cadets began to understand. One whispered, "Why do the beasts not climb after him?" Another muttered, "They stay on the ground. They chase us, not him." The reptilian narrowed his glowing eyes. The forest plays tricks. He will die soon. Yet his voice cracked with doubt. The human kept working. His plan was not built on strength, but on patience. Every branch tied was a step closer to survival. Every knot held the promise of safety. He thought of the instructor's words before the exam. Survive 7 hours, not win. Not conquer. Only survive, he whispered again. 7 hours. I just need 7 hours. Below, the cadets argued. Fear made them reckless. One wanted to run deeper, another to form a circle of defense. The reptilian shouted over them, but no one listened anymore. Their unity had shattered. The forest used their anger against them. The ground shifted, vines lashed out, dragging another screaming cadet away. The survivors scattered, stumbling into the dark. The human watched with sad eyes, but he did not climb down. He could not save them. To move was to die. To shout was to be heard. Only silence kept him safe. His treehouse was small, but it grew stronger. 2 branches crossed to form a floor. Vines wrapped them tight. A roof of leaves hid him from above. It was not perfect. Gaps still showed, but it was enough. Hours crawled by like wounded beasts. The night thickened. The forest grew hungrier. Strange lights floated between the trees, eyes or spirits no one could tell. Whispers echoed, calling names, voices of lost cadets trying to lure survivors out. The human sat still, pressing his back against the trunk. He did not answer the whispers. He did not believe the lights. He waited, but the forest tested him. A pair of glowing eyes appeared at the base of his tree. Slowly, a massive creature circled, sniffing the air. Its claws scraped the bark, its breath hot and foul. The human froze. His hand rested on a sharp stick he had carved, but he did not move. He knew one thing, fight and he would be dead. Minutes passed like hours. The creature sniffed again, growled low, then turned away. The human exhaled, slow and steady. His silence had saved him. Meanwhile, on the ground, chaos ruled. The reptilian cadet, one of the last strong ones, swung his blade in madness. Shadows closed in. His roars turned to screams, and then silence. The forest was winning. Now only a handful of cadets remained, scattered and broken. Each one was a target, and each one knew it. Their glowing eyes searched the darkness, wide with terror. Some looked up at the human, their faces twisted with envy and rage. "He sits safe while we bleed," one shouted. "Coward." Another screamed. Their voices carried. The forest heard. Within moments, monsters swarmed their position. Screams tore through the night again. The human pressed his forehead against the wood of his shelter. He closed his eyes. He did not cheer. He did not gloat. His plan was not about pride. It was about survival. He whispered one last time. "The forest punishes pride. It punishes sound, but it cannot break patience." Above, in his treehouse, he remained unseen. Below, the cadets fell one by one, and the deadly forest was far from finished. The deadly forest grew hungrier as the night deepened. Shadows moved like living things. The ground shifted as if it breathed. Every sound, every step, every whisper carried danger. By now, most cadets were gone. Their proud roars and battle cries had been silenced, swallowed by the forest. Only a few survivors remained, wounded, shaking, desperate. Yet among them were the strongest of the group, the ones who had entered with unshakable pride. One of them was the reptilian warrior. His scales were cracked, his tail bleeding, but his eyes still burned with rage. He refused to accept defeat. Another was the insectoid general, tall and sharp, his blade-like arms still dripping with black blood from the creatures he had slain. And there was the armored brute, covered in plates like living steel, his body almost indestructible. He had crushed beasts underfoot, yet the forest had not crushed him. Yet. They were the strongest, the cadets who believed no exam, no forest, no monster could stop them. But the deadly forest did not care for pride. From above, the human watched. His treehouse was nearly complete. A simple platform, tied tight with vines, covered with leaves. He sat quietly, listening, studying. His eyes followed the strongest cadets as they prepared for another fight. The reptilian slammed his blade into the ground. "This forest is a lie. It kills the weak, but we are not weak." The insectoid hissed, his mandibles clicking. "Then let us hunt it. No beast can stand against us together." The armored brute grunted. "I will crush anything that comes." Their voices were sharp, angry, proud. They burned with fire, but the forest thrived on fire. The ground trembled. The trees creaked. From the darkness, a low growl rolled through the forest. Leaves shook, branches bent, and the survivors froze. Then the monster came. It was massive, larger than any beast before. Its body was covered in thick black fur, its legs like twisted tree trunks. Its head split open with rows of jagged teeth, glowing green inside its throat. It moved with terrifying speed for something so big. The cadets roared and attacked. The reptilian leapt forward, his blade glowing as he slashed at the beast's leg. The insectoid struck from the side, his arms slicing like swords. The armored brute charged head-on, crashing into the monster with the strength of a falling mountain. The forest shook with the impact. The beast screamed, a sound that made the trees shake and the air crack. But it did not fall. With one swipe, its claw struck the insectoid. His sharp body shattered against a tree. His scream ended in silence. The reptilian stabbed again, hissing in fury. But the monster's tail whipped around, sending him flying through branches. His body hit the ground with a sickening crack. The armored brute held his ground, pressing forward with all his strength. He roared louder, pushing against the beast's chest. For a moment, it seemed he might win. Then the beast opened its jaws. Green fire spilled out, wrapping around the brute. His armor glowed, melted, cracked. His roar turned to a scream. He staggered, then fell, his massive body burned into ash. The strongest had fallen. Above, the human sat in silence. He did not cheer. He did not move. His eyes stayed fixed on the scene. The forest had punished them for pride, for rage, for sound. He whispered, "Strength breaks. Noise kills. Patience survives." The beast sniffed the air, searching for more prey. Its glowing eyes swept the forest floor. The human pressed himself against the trunk, hidden under leaves. The monster's gaze passed beneath him, but it did not climb. It turned and slowly vanished into the shadows. On the ground, silence returned. The forest was littered with broken bodies, weapons scattered, armor cracked. The strongest were gone. The human looked at his shelter. It was not perfect. It shook in the wind and the vines creaked. But it was still standing. More importantly, he was still alive. Hours remained before dawn. The forest would not rest. More creatures waited. More tricks would come, but the human's plan had worked so far. He sat back against the wood, breathing slow. His mind replayed what he had seen. The proud crushed, the powerful burned, the fearless broken. He thought, the forest doesn't care who you are. It only cares who learns. A faint sound broke the silence. Not a roar, not a scream. A whisper. His name, the human stiffened. It was the voice of one of the fallen cadets. The insectoid. The exact same tone, the same clicking voice. Human, come down. Help me. He shook his head. He had seen the insectoid die. The forest was trying to trick him. He pressed his hands over his ears and closed his eyes. Not real, he whispered. Not real. The voice grew louder, now calling again and again. The forest was testing him. But he did not answer. He stayed still. The forest fell quiet once more. The strongest cadets were gone. Their strength had turned to dust. Only one remained untouched by the chaos. The human alone in his treehouse, small and ordinary, yet still alive. He looked at the horizon, though dawn was still far away. 7 hours, he whispered. I will last 7 hours. The deadly forest growled in the distance as if amused by his challenge. The exam was not over. It was only growing darker. The deadly forest never rested. It shifted, breathed, and whispered in the dark. Even when no monster was seen, the silence felt dangerous, like the calm before a storm. High in his treehouse, the human sat still. His shelter was simple, a platform of branches tied with vines covered by leaves to hide his shape. It swayed with the wind, but it held. For a time, nothing came. The forest below was quiet except for the faint sound of dripping water and the distant cries of beasts hunting other prey. The human allowed himself a slow breath, but the forest had been watching. And now the forest came for him. A faint scratching began at the base of the tree. It was soft at first, like claws testing the bark. Then it grew louder. Scratch, 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 the human froze, pressing his back against the trunk. He looked down through the leaves. Something was moving below. From the shadows, 3 creatures stepped into the faint moonlight. They were long and thin, their bodies black as tar. Their eyes glowed red and their jaws clicked open and shut with sharp teeth. They sniffed the air, heads twisting, searching. One clawed at the tree, leaving deep marks in the bark. Another hissed, its tongue flicking in and out. The third tilted its head upward, staring into the branches. The human held his breath. His heart pounded, but he did not move. The creatures circled the tree faster and faster. Then one began to climb. Its claws dug into the bark, pulling its body upward with unnatural speed. The others followed. The human's eyes darted to the traps he had prepared. Vines tied to sharpened sticks. A bundle of stones balanced on a branch. They were simple, weak compared to alien weapons, but they were quiet, and quiet was his weapon. He pulled a vine. The bundle of stones dropped. They rained down on the climbing creature, smashing against its skull. With a shriek, it lost its grip and crashed to the ground. The other 2 hissed in fury, climbing faster. Their claws scraped, their jaws snapped, their red eyes glowing brighter as they rose toward him. The human grabbed another vine and pulled hard. A sharp branch swung downward, striking the second creature across the face. It screeched, blood sprang, and fell back to the earth. The third did not stop. It reached the platform, its red eyes burning inches from his. Its jaws opened wide, rows of teeth ready to tear him apart. The human reacted fast. He thrust his sharpened stick forward, jamming it into the creature's mouth. It screamed, thrashing, shaking the platform violently. The shelter creaked, vines stretching under the weight. The human gritted his teeth, holding the stick with all his strength. With a final shove, the creature slipped backward and tumbled down, crashing onto the forest floor. Silence. The human's chest rose and fell in heavy breaths. He stayed still, listening, waiting for more. The forest did not roar, did not laugh. Only the faint rustle of leaves remained. Slowly he looked down. The 3 creatures lay broken at the base of the tree. Their bodies twitched, then stilled. The human whispered, "The forest tests. The forest watches." But even as he spoke, he knew this was only the beginning. The attack had shaken his treehouse. A section of vines had loosened, and the platform leaned slightly to one side. If more came, it might not hold. He worked quickly, retightening the vines, adding more branches for support. His hands moved fast but careful. Every knot, every tie mattered. As he worked, his mind repeated the same thought. Do not fight the forest. outlasted. Far below the last surviving cadets, only two now heard the commotion. One pointed up at the treehouse. The human fights too. He cannot hide forever. The other shook his head, fear in his voice. But he still lives. He outlasts us all, they argued, their voices rising. The forest heard them. From the darkness, more shapes moved. Their argument ended in screams. Then silence again. The human did not look down. He had learned. Those who shouted always vanished. He tied another knot, strengthened his platform, and lay flat against the leaves. Minutes passed. Then hours. The forest tested him again, this time with whispers. Voices called from below. Familiar voices. Cadets he had seen die. Help us, human. Come down, we are alive. He pressed his hands against his ears and shut his eyes. He knew the truth. The forest was a liar. The dead did not speak. Still, the whispers clawed at his mind. His body shook, but he held his silence. At last, the voices faded. The human sat alone, the night pressing heavy around him. His treehouse creaked, but it held. His traps were broken, but he was still alive. He whispered, soft as the wind. 7 hours. I can survive 7 hours. The forest answered with a growl in the distance, low and deep, as if amused by his defiance. The first attack had failed, but the night was far from over. The deadly forest was never silent for long. When one danger passed, another always followed. When screams faded, whispers came. When monsters left, shadows returned. The forest was alive, and it was cruel. High in his treehouse, the human pressed his back against the trunk. His body ached from climbing, his hands were raw from tying vines, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew the forest wanted him to panic, to move, to shout. He refused. Below, the last cries of alien cadets had already ended. The ground was littered with broken armor and blood, swallowed slowly by moss. The strongest were gone. The loudest were gone. Only one human, small and ordinary, remained. The night was far from over. Whispers in the dark it began again with voices. They rose from the ground, soft at first, then louder. Human, come down. Help us. We are not dead. He recognized the voices. The reptilian, the insectoid, the armored brute. Each one spoke in the same tone they had used before death. But the human had seen their ends. He had seen their bodies broken, their screams cut short. He knew these were lies. The forest was speaking through their voices. He shut his eyes, pressing his hands against his ears. His heart raced, but he whispered, steady and calm. Not real. Not real. The whispers turned to screams. They begged. They cursed. They shouted his name. His shelter shook as if the voices themselves pressed against the tree. He stayed still. He did not answer. At last, the voices faded, leaving only silence. Shadows that move. The silence did not last. From the edge of the forest, glowing shapes appeared. At first, they looked like cadets. Bodies moving between the trees, holding weapons, calling out for help. But their eyes were wrong. Their movements were twisted, jerky, unnatural. The human watched with narrowed eyes. The forest was not only a place of monsters. It was a place of illusions. It created what you wanted to see and used it against you. He whispered again, not real. The shapes moved closer, but none touched the tree. When he did not move, they faded like mist in the morning sun. The hunger of silence. The hours stretched endlessly. The human had no way to count time, but his body told him it was deep into the night. Every second felt heavy. Every creak of wood made his heart jump. He was hungry, thirsty, and cold. His body begged him to climb down, to search for food, to move. But he knew movement meant death. His patience was tested not by claws, but by silence. The silence grew so heavy it felt like weight on his chest. His mind whispered, move, speak, do something. He bit his lip until it bled, forcing himself to stay still. The forest wanted weakness. He would give it nothing. The second attack, then came the sound, scratching again, deeper this time. Not one creature, many. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared at the base of the tree. Long limbs, sharp teeth, low growls. They circled like wolves, climbing faster than before. The human grabbed his last trap, a heavy branch tied with vines above his shelter. As the first creature reached the platform, he cut the rope. The branch swung down like a hammer, smashing into the monster's skull. It fell shrieking, but more kept climbing. The human kicked one back, jammed another with his broken stick. His arm shook, his shelter swayed violently. Vines snapped, leaves fell. For a moment it seemed the whole structure would collapse, but then a roar thundered from the distance. The creatures froze. They hissed, backing away, and leapt to the ground. In seconds they vanished into the shadows. The forest had called them away for something worse. The watcher from the dark came a presence unlike the others. Heavy steps shook the ground. Branches bent as something enormous approached. The human peered through the leaves. A single glowing eye shone in the dark, bright as a torch. It was round, unblinking, fixed on his tree. The watcher. It did not move closer. It only stared. The human could feel its gaze pressing into him, heavy and endless. His skin crawled. His mind screamed at him to shout, to fight, to run. But he stayed still. Minutes passed. The watcher never blinked. Hours seemed to stretch. At last, with a deep growl, the eye turned and disappeared into the forest. The human sagged against the trunk, sweat dripping down his face. He had passed another test, the breaking point. The forest tried one final trick. The ground below glowed with soft light, warm and golden. It was not monstrous. It was beautiful. For the first time, the forest looked safe. A path appeared, leading through the trees. At the end of the path, he saw a door leading to home. He almost moved. His body leaned forward. His mind whispered, freedom, escape. But then he stopped. The exam was not finished. The forest was lying again. He shut his eyes and whispered one last time, 7 hours. I only need 7 hours. When he opened his eyes, the path and the light were gone. Only darkness remained. End of the night at last, the forest grew still. The whispers stopped. The shadows faded. The creatures withdrew into the deep. Only the wind moved through the trees. The human lay flat on his shelter, exhausted but alive. He had faced illusions, whispers, hunger, silence, and monsters. His body was weak, but his patience was strong. He breathed slow and steady, watching the horizon. The sky was changing. The first pale light of dawn touched the treetops. The long night was ending, but the deadly forest had one last surprise waiting at sunrise. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. The human sat in his treehouse, his body trembling with exhaustion. His lips were dry, his hands torn, his eyes heavy with sleeplessness. Yet he was alive. He had faced the long night, the whispers, the monsters, even the unblinking eye of the watcher. And now, at the edge of the horizon, he saw it, the first pale light of dawn. For a moment, his chest filled with hope. 7 hours. He had survived, but the deadly forest was not finished. The last trial, the ground trembled. Leaves fell from branches. From the depths of the forest came a sound like thunder. The human's tired eyes widened. Dawn had come, but the exam had one last trial. A massive shape rose from the trees. Taller than any beast before, its body was formed of roots and shadows, its head crowned with branches like horns. Its glowing eyes burned like suns, and its roar shook the sky. The human clutched the wood of his shelter. His arms were weak, his traps were gone. He had nothing left but silence and patience. The creature walked toward his tree, each step shaking the ground. It stopped at the base, tilting its massive head upward. Its eyes locked on him. The human held still. He did not breathe. He did not move. The creature reached for the trunk. The tree shook violently, leaves scattering. The human's platform groaned, vines straining. Another shake, harder this time. The shelter leaned dangerously. The human whispered through dry lips, 7 hours. Just 7 hours, the beast roared, shaking the tree again. The human's body slammed against the trunk, pain flashing through his ribs. He clung to the vines desperately. Then, light. The first rays of the sun broke through the canopy. Golden beams spread across the forest floor. The beast roared again, louder, but its body began to fade, breaking into smoke and ash. The light spread, touching the shadows, chasing them back. The whispers stopped. The illusions vanished. The deadly forest, alive and hungry all night, retreated into silence. The human gasped, tears in his eyes. He had lasted. He had endured. The instructors arrive. The sky opened as a ship descended, its engines scattering leaves. The forest growled one last time, but the sound faded as the dawn claimed victory. The human's eyes blinked against the sudden brightness of the ship's lights. The doors opened and the instructors stepped out. Tall, armored, their faces hidden behind masks, they looked around the clearing. Broken cadet weapons lay scattered. Blood stained the moss. But there were no living aliens. No one had survived, except him. One instructor's voice rang out, cold but proud. "Human cadet, stand!" The human's legs shook as he climbed down from his treehouse. He dropped onto the ground, stumbling, his body barely holding together. But he stood. The instructors studied him. Behind their masks, their voices carried disbelief. Impossible. Even the strongest fell. No human has ever lasted the deadly forest. The lead instructor stepped forward. His voice was sharp as steel. "You have no claws, no armor, no fire, yet you survived where others failed. How?" The human raised his head, his voice hoarse but steady. "I did not fight the forest. I listened to it. I stayed quiet. I was patient. 7 hours was all I needed." The instructors were silent for a long moment. Then the lead one nodded. Strategy over strength, patience over pride, the lesson of survival. He raised his hand, signaling to the ship. "This cadet passes." The revelation, as the ship's lights lit the clearing, the human turned back for one last look at the forest. In the dawn light, it seemed almost calm, almost beautiful. Birds flew from the branches. Mist rose from the moss, but he knew the truth. He had seen its hunger. He had heard its lies. He had faced its beasts. The deadly forest was no ordinary place. It was alive. It had tested him, tried to break him, tried to tempt him, and it had failed. The forest would remember him, and he would never forget it. The human stepped into the ship. The doors closed, engines roaring. The forest grew smaller beneath him, but as the ship rose higher, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Deep in the forest, hidden under the trees, thousands of glowing eyes opened all at once. They watched the ship leave. They waited. The forest had not lost. It had only let him go. The future. The instructors turned to him inside the ship. "You survived the impossible. The galaxy will want to know your name." The human shook his head. "Names don't matter. Only survival matters," but in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. The deadly forest was just one exam. There would be more. More trials, more dangers, and if humans could survive this, what else could they endure? As the ship carried him into the sky, the sun rose higher, chasing the shadows away. But in the darkness of space, new shadows waited. The cadet closed his eyes and whispered one last time, a promise to himself. Survive first. Win later. The deadly forest had been the start. The galaxy had no idea what humans could do.